Now, once there was a time when there was no spring, neither summer nor autumn, nor chilly winter, with its black frosts and cruel gales and brief dark days. Always was there sunshine and warmth, ever were there flowers and corn and fruit, and nowhere did the flowers grow with more dazzling colors and more fragrant perfumes than in the fair garden of Sicily. To Demeter, the grain goddess, was born a daughter more fair than any flower that grew, and every year more dear to her their child became. The lovely Persephone. By the blue sea in the Sicilian meadows, Persephone and the fair nymphs who were her companions spent their happy days. Too short were the days for all of their joy, and Demeter made the earth yet fairer than it was, that she might bring more gladness to her daughter Persephone. Each day, the blossoms that the nymphs twined into garlands grew more perfect in the form and hue, and from the anemones of royal purple, crimson, and riotous red of the geraniums. Persephone turned one morning with a cry of gladness, for there stood before her on the perfect slim stem a wonderful narcissus with 100 blossoms. Her eager hand was stretched out to pluck it when a sudden black cloud overshadowed the land, and the nymphs, with shrieks and fear, fled swiftly away, and as the cloud descended, a terrible sound filled the air, as of the rushing of many waters, or the roll of the heavy wheels of a chariot for one who comes to slay. Then was the earth cleft open, and from the hole arose the four coal-black horses of Hades, neighing aloud in their eagerness, while the dark-browed god urged them on, standing tall in his chariot of gold. With cold, strong arms, Hades seized the girl in his mighty grasp that could not be denied, and Persephone wept as she shivered at his icy touch and sobbed because she had dropped the flowers she had picked. Surely she foolishly thought to herself, the king of the underworld could not take one so young, so happy, so fair. She had only tasted the joy of living, and fain she would drink deeper in the coming years. Her mother must surely save her from death. Her mother who had never yet failed her mother and the gods. But ruthless as the mower whose scythe cuts down the seeded grass and the half-open flower alike drops them in the slices of the meadow, Hades drove on. His iron-colored veins were loose on the black manes of his horses, and he urged them forward by name till froth flew from their mouths like foam that the furious surf of the sea drives before it in a storm. Downward, deep into blackness of darkness, his horses passed, and Persephone knew no more pleasant light of day. When Persephone didn't arrive home at her usual time, her mother Demeter was immediately alarmed. She searched over land and sea, from where dawn, the rosy-fingered, rises in the east to where Apollo cools the fiery wheels of his chariots in the water of the western seas. The goddess sought her daughter without success. With a black robe over her head and carrying a flame torch in either hand, for 9 dreary days she searched, and yet for 9 more weary days and 9 sleepless nights the goddess, racked by human sorrow, sat in hopeless misery. The hot sun beat upon her by day. By night the silver rays from the moon smote her more gently, and the dew drenched her hair and her black garments, and mingled with the saltness and the bitterness of her tears. At the gray dawning of the 10th day, her elder daughter Hecate stood beside her, queen of the ghosts, and the shade she was, and to her all dark places of the earth were known. Let us go to the sun god, said Hecate. Surely he hath seen the one who stole away our fair Persephone. Soon his chariot will arrive across the heavens. Come, let us ask him to guide us through the place where she is hidden. Thus did they come to the chariot of the glorious Apollo, standing by the heads of his horses like 2 gray clouds that bar passage of the sun. They begged to tell him the name of the one who had stolen Persephone. No less thief was he, said Apollo, as he admitted, than Hades, the king of darkness, the robber of life himself. Mourn not, Demeter, thy daughter is safe in his keeping. The little nymph who played in the meadows is now the queen of the shades, nor does Hades love her without return. She is, in fact, now in love with him too. No comfort did the words of the sun god bring to the longing soul of Demeter. As her wounded heart grew bitter, she suffered. Because she suffered, others would suffer as well. Because she mourned, she wanted the whole world to mourn. The fragrant flowers reminded her only of Persephone. The purple grapes brought to her troubled mind a vintage when the white fingers of her child plucked the fruit. The waving golden grain told her that Persephone was an ear of wheat that was reaped before its time. When upon the earth Demeter brought down, then upon earth Demeter brought drought and barrenness. Gods and men alike suffered from the sorrow of Demeter. To her, in pity for the barren earth, Zeus sent an embassy, but in vain it came. Merciless was the great earth goddess who had been robbed of what she held most dear. Give me back my child, she cried. Gladly I watch the sufferings of men, for no sorrow is as my sorrow. Give me back my child, and the earth shall grow fertile once more. Unwillingly, Zeus granted Demeter's request. She shall come back, he said, and with thee dwell on earth forever. Yet only one condition can I grant thy fond request. Persephone must not have eaten any food through the time of her sojourn in the realm of Hades. Demeter then gladly left Olympus and hastened down the darkness of the shadowy land so she could once again hold in her strong mother's arms the girl who had once been her precious clinging child. But in the dark kingdom of Hades, a strange thing had happened. No longer did the pale-faced god with dark locks and eyes of obsidian hold any terror for Persephone. He was strong and cold, as she had feared, yet now she also saw an infinite tenderness in his face. Knowing the edict of the ruler of Olympus, Hades craftily gave his stolen bride a pomegranate as red as the heart of man, and she had taken it from his hand because he willed it, and had eaten a few of the tart, sweet seeds. Soon Demeter arrived, saying nothing to her brother, Hades. He took Persephone's hand, guiding her up to the land of the living. Back to the flowery island of Sicily, her mother brought her, and the peach trees and the almonds blossomed as she passed. The olives decked themselves in their fuzzy gray leaves, and the corn sprang up, green, lush, and strong. The lemon and orange groves grew golden with luscious fruit, and all the land was carpeted with flowers. It was long before Hades pled his case. It wasn't long before Hades pled his case to his brother, admitting that his courtship had been abrupt, but arguing that his wife wanted to be by his side in the underworld. And besides, he argued, she had eaten the fruit of the realm of the dead. She was bound to return to him. To satisfy both parties, Zeus made his decree. For 6 months of the year, Persephone would stay with Demeter, bringing time when the gods and men could rejoice in the natural abundance that accompanied Demeter's happiness. And for the other 6 months, 1 month for each of the seeds she had eaten, Persephone would leave her mother's green and pleasant land for the kingdom of whom she loved. In those months, the trees would be bare, the earth chill, and under the earth, the flowers would hide themselves for a season, awaited the return of the fair daughter of Demeter. And since that time, Persephone has come and gone as scheduled. Seed time and the harvest have never failed, and the cold, sleeping world always awakens and rejoices upon the return of lovely Persephone. So to kind of summarize this story for you in a few less words than these that I just read, because these words are kind of confusing. We have the story of a story of mother and daughter, and Mother Demeter loves her daughter Persephone, and at some point during Persephone's life, she's kidnapped by Hades, the god of the underworld, and taken very, very abruptly and fiercely down to the underworld. I got some opinions on that because she, then falls in love with him, and you know how that just doesn't seem consensual, but what do I know? So as far as notes go, on the Google form that is attached to this story, just jot down anything that stands out to you. But back to what I was saying. So she goes down to the underworld with Hades, falls in love with him. the whole time that Demeter, the mother, doesn't have her daughter Persephone, Demeter, who is in control of the earth, essentially, lets every plant die, lets cold air come in, when traditionally she had always kept the earth warm and fruitful. And so without Persephone, the earth becomes barren, and dies. So think about leaves falling from the trees, plants dying, sort of like the transition from fall and winter. Um, so they come up with an agreement when they visit Zeus that Persephone is going to be with her husband Hades for 6 months of the year, and then with her mother Demeter for 6 months of the year. So when Demeter does not have her daughter, that's when she lets the earth become cold and chilly and unable to grow. So think about that as fall and winter. And then when Demeter has her daughter, that's where trees grow, flowers bloom, the earth is warm. So essentially, this story is giving you the explanation for why the earth changes seasons. Remember, in mythology, we don't know why. These primitive societies didn't have the science to explain why things were happening, so they use these stories to do that. So that is the theme and the moral of the story, is the changing of the seasons. So changing of the seasons is the theme and the moral of the story. And real world connections here, I would like you to think of anything that stands out to you as something in the real world. You can say that it's because of seasons changing. You can talk about the fact that people do kidnap people sometimes, and they end up falling in love with their captors. Whatever you want to put for that. All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. And email me if you have any questions.